Today, I'll be going over, at least in my opinion, the best and worst weapons in Deepwoken going into 2025, and the in-between of those best and worst weapons. So let's begin. Do note, this tier listing will go over the weapons that I have used for the most part, and this is all, of course, with an opinion. I will try my best to refrain from bias and disingenuity, but to be fair, I'm no Grandmaster, so if you think you are one, then please drop your opinion in the comment section, and I'll take a look into your point. Anyways, let's actually begin. Starting off with the Gran Sudaruska, this weapon overall is solid in all aspects. It's got fairly average M1 speed and damage for a great axe, but has no end lag, which is very good and does compensate a tad bit for the swing speed. On top of that, you do get pretty good a pretty good AoE critical and good talent synergy. This weapon is very good overall, and you can't really go wrong with it. This weapon gets a personal ranking of A tier from me. Nothing exemplary or extraordinary, but won't hold you back in all battles and duels. It won't really hold you back at all. I'll say personally, the Gran Sudaruska used to be even better, with the most aggressive crystal procking ever. Like, I remember when it vented, it would still proc crystals, but that did get patched up, so it's not a factor nowadays. The next weapon on the list is the Purple Cloud. Now, I have a few bones to pick with this quote-unquote sword. First off being the characteristics. On paper, in what world does a weapon that would be good possess a fist weapon hitbox and medium weapon swing speed? It just doesn't really exist because it's an objectively bad combination of features and makes for a poor fighting experience, since you don't have the advantage of your small hitbox attacks being fast because they just aren't, and they don't have the advantage of medium weapons, that being their increased range of fists and daggers alike. The critical of the Purple Cloud is fine, it's just a subpar nemesis with a pretty short range and slow wind up, but it's there. It does share medium weapon damage, which is fine. It's just the design and characteristics of the Purple Cloud still perplexes me to this day, and I don't get why this weapon exists just for it to be a sword that you don't even sheath. I feel like the reason this weapon exists is just to breathe a bit more life into the medium weapon sector, since I would indeed agree that most of the medium swords are kind of the same in terms of damage, swing speed, and criticals, asterisks there, but I personally feel, having used this weapon in combat for a short period of time, that it was not went about correctly, concept-wise. Like, maybe they could have turned this weapon into a normal sword with different, more fancy animations and buff the critical a little bit to try to make this more akin to something like Dire Malice. But either way, the Purple Cloud is a subpar weapon with poor aspects that hold you back from genuine viability. So it gets a ranking of C+ tier from me. A subpar weapon with clueless decision making behind it. That's all I could really tell you for the Purple Cloud. Moving on to the next weapon here, we have the Ignition Deepcrusher. This club weapon used to be quite good when Iron Sting had a godly damage ceiling, but that has since been nerfed, plus the Ra's not proccing as easily, I think. This weapon has kind of fallen from grace within like 4 to 5 months of its existence. It does have solid damage it does have solid scaling / damage, and does have the ability to transform into a sword, but it's useless, so no one really uses it. To help it, it does have 20% innate pen and bleed, which is good for PvP. The critical attack is alright. You just plunge the Deepcrusher into the ground, and 1 second later Iron Spike can come out and deal damage, though it is a bit slow. The swing speed is average for a medium club weapon, and does mean that, all things considered, the Deepcrusher is an alright to decent weapon. It's just the attunement it works with has now become more in line with the others. Like, barely anyone uses this weapon or Iron Sting anymore, which is a bit sad, but tough. You gotta live with it. I give this weapon, having used it quite extensively in combat, a solid A- tier. It's nothing extreme and not really popular anymore, but it's not as bad as the Purple Cloud. So yeah, that's that. Next up is the Railblade. This greatsword is very, and I mean very good. To start things off, it has a close to medium weapon swing speed, but does heavy equivalent damage, which makes the characteristics of this weapon superb for fighting with. You get 25% innate pen and 2 criticals too. The criticals themselves are good. The first one is the ground one, which is the one you dash slightly towards your target and do a decent amount of damage plus burn. The second critical is an aerial one. You dash up into the air and quickly slide across it. This one does a bit more damage, but is less flexible versus the ground one. The devs have tried to nerf this weapon in the past, as in a recent update, reducing its swing speed very slightly, but you can't really tell, and they even buffed the weapon by making it enchantable, in turn it losing its legendary title. Overall though, having mastered the Railblade in combat extensively, in my opinion. In my opinion, this weapon gets a well-placed A tier. It's just very strong, and I don't get why people say this weapon sucks. It is really good, although no spoilers, but there is a significantly better version of this weapon coming later. Following up on that though, we arrive to the Crypt Blade. This weapon is also very good right now. It has 2 criticals and has very good talents packed into it, like Aftercut, I believe, and does decent M1 damage and comes with 15% innate pen. The scaling is hit or miss, but that honestly doesn't matter too much. The Crypt Blade also has pretty good swing speed and does even have 2 swing styles, I guess. But let's dive into the criticals. The first one being where you spin around and launch gale wind shit towards your targets. It's pretty good and does solid damage, but if the target's close, then don't use it because it does give off a bit of land lag and could get you hit. The second critical is for the second fighting style, where with two blades you spin in the air and charge towards your target. This one's alright as damage is less and is more easy to parry, but it's decent for mobility. To conclude, the Crypt Blade is very good for a verse 1 weapon. It's one that has not really been nerfed or buffed, yet still holds its own against the current 2025 metas, and most likely beyond that. This weapon gets a deserved A+ tier. The Crypt Blade wins won't blow your socks off, but it won't let you down either. Next up is what used to be the rarest thing in the game in verse 1, the Crypt Blade. As this was a legendary weapon, and still is, as this was, of course, a legendary weapon back during verse 1, it still is, but, you know, not literally legendary as it was in verse 1, like people were just so rare, but it's still legendary, but just not the same kind of legendary. Barely anyone had it, and it was regarded for the time to be one of the best weapon in the game. But what can I say? Unfortunately, times have changed. This weapon was mostly never changed going into 2023 to 2024, and into 2025 has remained completely the same. And so what does this mean for something like the Crypt Blade is that it has now become quite outdated versus its peers, like the newer Pyre Keeper and even the Curve Blade from the same era as the Crypt Blade. Stats-wise, the Crypt Blade has excellent M1 damage, with it outputting 47 to 51 damage per M1, which is exemplary for a greatsword even today. But M1 damage is not everything, so what else does it have? It does have decent talent synergy, but from that point on, that's when this weapon's problems start. The critical is not the best, it's slow and doesn't do a lot of damage. To compound that, the Crypt Blade's swing speed is also poor, with it being quite a slow greatsword, making it pretty easy to read and in turn not very good for offense versus its peers, especially the Pyre Keeper. In conclusion, the Crypt Blade suffers from not being the most viable in 2025 due to the existence of other more powerful alternatives, but it still holds its own somewhat. B+ tier. Crushing that weapon, the Pyre Keeper is one of those weapons where it's a bit too powerful in every way, and that's because it is. For starters, it has 5 very good damage criticals, which is the most out of anything in the game, with the Light Final Toll being the only one to come close. Its M1 damage is average for a greatsword, but once again, M1 damage isn't everything, and this weapon also applies burn on every M1, which pretty much compensates for that, and adds on while it's at it. The Pyre Keeper also has near medium equivalent swing speed, and pretty good scaling. This weapon is very fast and deadly, assuming you don't know the parry timings. This weapon is the true definition of being quote-unquote carried by the weapon, literally. It really and truly is one of the most powerful weapons in the game right now, and far surpasses the Crypt Blade and even the Curve Blade in most, if not all, metrics. I will say that the Pyre Keeper could do with a slight nerf to stuff like criticals and maybe the burn on every M1, but this weapon is the hidden meta right now. I will legitimately say that. What I'm saying currently is that most people can get away with spamming the critical and other mantras and pretty much win fairly easily. I mean, hey, the stats don't lie. This spanks the competition and will be blowing your socks off. S tier. Alright, we're nearly done. Next on the list is Flayed Commas. This weapon, it's honestly okay. It's got great M1 damage for a light, and also does bleed too. It has a critical that has no wind-up, plus for medium to long range engagements will catch 90% of people off guard. Meanwhile, I would not recommend using the critical in short range, as there is slight end lag and so you may not hit the person. Generally, the Flayed Commas are just fine. They swing pretty fast and don't have as horrendous of a hitbox restriction like the Purple Cloud. This weapon also gives 30% innate pen, which is nuts, in my opinion. But it's, as I said, okay. B tier. Final one before the last with Light's Final Toll. This spell-like weapon is once again alright. It has 4 criticals that go in stages depending on how many times you M1 someone, with each stage granting a superior critical. You do get an above average M1 damage for a light fist weapon, but in my opinion, what limits this weapon is the fact that it's pretty much bare bones. You can't enchant it, and its M1s are pretty readable. There's not a lot of synergy going on with this weapon, slash anything at all really going on with this weapon apart from the criticals. It pretty much just limits it quite a bit, but it is better than Purple Cloud. B- tier. Last but not least, we have the Hero Blades. There are 5 Hero Blades in the game, for Flame Charm, Gale Breath, Thundercall, Shadowcast, and Frostdraw. All blades have the same M1 damage, but different critical attacks. The Hero's Blade of Flame has a solid critical that can set you up for a combo pretty easily, which is good for Flame Charm especially, obviously. Then there's the Hero's Blade of Gale Breath. Oh, Gale, sorry, I butchered that. This one is pretty lackluster. You get a critical that's bare bones damage, it barely hits, and when it does fucking hit, the ragdoll, it just ragdolls the player for a couple seconds, but it can guard break if you block it, so it's not completely gutted, but it kinda is. The Hero's Blade of Thunder, the Thundercall Hero Blade critical, is very good. It launches streaks of lightning towards the target and does alright damage, and I believe does actually ragdoll them. It's probably the best of all Hero Blades. Hero Blades of Shadow is also very good and proc Shadow Talents plus the critical doing decent damage too. It's good, and more people are using it now. The final Hero Blade, the Hero Blade of Frost, is trash. That's all I can really say from people that I fought who have used it and from people online. And also, I can absolutely assure you, if this weapon was good, more people would be using it. But yeah, that's the comprehensive look at all legendary-ish weapons that I've used in the past. There are many that weren't covered, that's because I've never used them before, so I couldn't give a conclusive look. If you don't like the opinions given, that's completely understandable, and I won't challenge your right to think that way. If you like what you heard and saw, then please subscribe and share the video so more people can get more perspectives on this topic. I just want to know if I should make more videos like this, because, you know, to be fair, my opinions are quite unpopular half the time, but hey, I wanted to make a video like this again. But yeah, bye-bye.